My name's David Brecky, and I'll introduce myself and the panel here shortly. But just wanted to say thank you to SOA and to Ultramarine for putting this together. Regenerative blue economy is a new term that I, despite being interested in the ocean my whole life, it's a new one for me, and I'm glad it's a thing now. I'm very proud to be sharing the screen with these four entrepreneurs, very inspiring and fascinating people that I hope get a chance to tell you their story today. Sam Teicher from Coral Vita. We have Courtney Opshog from Blue Ocean Gear. We have Rafid Shidki from Thresher Shark Indonesia, and Anandya Irawan from Carbon Ethics, also based in Indonesia. And all of them deserve a big round of virtual applause for what they're working on. It's really special. So I'm happy to help them share it with you today. I'd also like to share that I'm just happy that this event is happening, and the ocean, despite having been literally the biggest thing on Earth for the past 3.8 billion years, is now the next big thing in how we can help protect the Earth. And until recently in human history, it's been extractive relationship. We've been taking from the ocean without really thinking about it because it's so big that, frankly, until recently, it hasn't really hurt the ocean. But now we're in a place where if we're going to avoid in the future world where we have avoided the worst effects of climate change and environmental degradation, it's a world in which the people on this panel and the people watching have all been successful in this mission. So thank you all for being a part of that, and also good luck in doing that. So introducing myself first, I'm a corporate securities lawyer. I work at Wilson Sonsini, and if you haven't, those three words together, corporate securities lawyers, might be the three most boring if you put them right together in the English language. But I'd like to add that I work mostly with sustainability innovation companies like Sam and Courtney, and I also work a lot with SOA. So I'm in a team in Wilson Sonsini. We focus exclusively on sustainability innovation, how to get these companies funded, how to mentor the founders, how to scale their solutions, and how to bring them to market. So if it weren't for that, it would be really boring. But I am excited by that mission, and there are folks on the service provider side who are really excited to support these people as well. And to set the stage for the discussion, I want to say that we want to cover the following topics roughly. Number one, what are each of these four people doing that's so exciting and inspiring to us? What resources do you guys need, and what will you need to happen for you to kind of achieve the mission, the near term, the midterm, the long-term missions? And then looking back, what were the things that the resources you drew on to get where you are today? And what things can we do to kind of support people like you to kind of multiply the effect that you guys are having? Also, fun fact about me before I turn it over, if you have been distracted by my black eye, that is because my son, who's turning 1 this weekend, wanted to wake me up this week with a big hug/headbutt. And it was extremely effective at waking me up, but he didn't feel a thing. So I'm sure he'll be waking me up like that in the future. So no COVID street fight for me, but just good family fun. So fun facts are optional in each of your introductions. So finally, enough talking from me. With that, I'll turn it over to Sam first. Sam from Coral Vita, because I know you the best on the panel, and I know I can set you up great here. So everyone I talk to about Coral Vita, you know, kind of their jaw drops and their eyes open. And I think their faith in humanity is restored just a little bit. And it's a heartbreaking problem what you're trying to solve, and there aren't many easy solutions. And that's why Coral Vita is just such a gem. And I certainly wouldn't have thought the solution that you guys are working on. And I think that's what's really cool about it. So, you know, please say hello to the folks on Necker and virtually, and on behalf of Coral Vita.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to be here with you. Thanks to Wilson Sonsini, Ultramarine, SOA, and Oceanic for putting this on. Also the other panelists. This is really a privilege to be here with you all. I'll lead with a fun fact just based on the story you shared. I'm a big Disney nerd and actually rewatched Hercules the other day, and the way that Hercules and Pegasus remember themselves is the headbutts they gave each other as babies. So, you know, you got a good thing going on there. My name's Sam Teicher. I'm the co-founder and chief reef officer of Coral Vita, and we are a social enterprise that grows coral up to 50 times faster to restore dying reefs. So I'm sure everyone out there, you think of coral reefs, whether from David Attenborough documentaries to your personal experiences diving and snorkeling to Finding Nemo, some of the most magical ecosystems on the planet. Vivid colors, beautiful creatures. I mean, almost like an alien world that's right off the shore. Sadly, though, half of the world's reefs are dead, and we're on track to lose over 90% within the next 30 years. And this is an ecological tragedy. And personally, for me, I've been a diver since I was a kid. I have a deep passion for the ocean. But it's also a socioeconomic catastrophe because you've got up to 1 billion people around the world, from Indonesia to the Bahamas to the UAE to Mexico, who rely on reefs for their livelihoods. A quarter of all marine life, billions and billions and billions of dollars generated every year through tourism, fisheries, and coastal protection. So as reefs die, this also poses a huge challenge to society. So what we do at Coral Vita is we grow corals using breakthrough methods to accelerate growth rates, grow them in months instead of decades, strengthen their resilience to climate change threats, and then are doing this as a business, transitioning the space away from small-scale grant-funded projects and actually looking at those ecosystem services, selling restoration as a service to hotels, insurers, governments, property owners, unlocking the funding to do ecosystem scale restoration. So I'm calling in from Grand Bahama, where we've got our first coral farm up and running. Ultimately, we want large-scale land-based farms in every nation with reefs around the world. And it's not what I grew up thinking I was going to be doing, being a coral farmer and entrepreneur, but it's the type of thing that, failure is not an option. We got to go out there and protect the ecosystems that sustain us all. So happy to be here, and hopefully people can come down and plant some corals.
Yeah, give us an introduction for yourself and for Blue Ocean Gear, and tell us about ghost fishing and why that's a thing.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. And again, thanks to Ultramarine and SOA and Wilson Sonsini for having me in this amazing group here. Yeah, I'm Courtney Opshag. I'm the CEO of Blue Ocean Gear. We're a California startup working on intelligent connected buoys for commercial fishing fleets so they can track their gear out on the ocean. And this is a problem that not many people have really thought about or understand how big it is, but there's 640,000 metric tons of fishing gear that are lost in our ocean every year. And the gear continues to fish. It's what it's designed to do. And what happens is that everything that's captured becomes bait for more fish to become caught. And so it's a cycle known as ghost fishing, and it can deplete fishery stocks. It's terrible for marine ecosystems. And it impacts harvest potential for the fishing industry as well. And so while no one wants to lose gear, and while it's seemingly a simple thing to do, what we aim to do is use our technology, which are these smart buoys, to help fishermen both track their gear and prevent gear loss. And we also can help them find their gear faster, so it reduces their overall carbon footprint of the industry. And we're hoping that that this gets adopted across various fisheries. We're working right now with fisheries all over North America, in Alaska, Nova Scotia, Massachusetts, New Brunswick. So we're really hoping that as we get more and more buoys out on the water, we can see a real impact to reducing ghost gear, reducing plastic pollution in the ocean, and improving the ocean health for this industry and beyond.
Rafi, tell us what you're working on in Allure and for the pelagic thresher shark.
Yeah, thanks very much, David. It's been an honor to be invited here with a very inspiring group of people. So my name is Rafi. So I should say greeting from Allure Island. It's a small island located in the southern part of the Coral Triangle region, one of the most biodiverse regions on Earth. So I'm a current active student at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I'm doing coastal science and policy graduate degree. And I'm also working part-time with Sustainable Ocean Alliance as the Southeast Asia representative. So helping connecting more young people in Southeast Asia to more network in Sustainable Ocean Alliance, and helping them to, access resources and mentorship and stuff like that. And, I'm juggling a lot of different things. So with being a master's student, working with SOA, and also managing my nonprofit called Treasure Shack Indonesia. It's a nonprofit based here in Allure Island. We're trying to transition small-scale fishermen who are heavily depending on pelagic treasure shark, which is right now an endangered species. But we're finding a way of what kind of alternative livelihood solutions that we can propose, and helping these fishermen shifting out from treasure shark fishing and into more kind of economically sustainable livelihoods in the future. And I'm starting my career as an intern in Lamakera project. We're working in Lamakera, where it's one of the big fishing nation for big fishing area for manta rays, where people are heavily depending on oceanic manta rays there, and helping the communities there transitioning into livelihoods. And Indonesia in general is one of the biggest shark fishing nation in the world. But right now, the solutions that we have is still extremely limited, given that many coastal populations who are depending on this type of fisheries are living in particularly remote and poor resource coastal communities. So they have extremely limited resources. And, the thing that we do here is to actually connect these fishermen into more sustainable market fisheries, such as tuna. So my organizations is collaborating with several organizations, including the Indonesian Pollen Line Tuna Associations, to get a certification market for this fish, for the tuna fisheries for these fishermen, and also other type of e-commerce, so that we can increase the value while still minimizing the catch. So by that way, I think we can, improving the economic well-being of this community, while at the same time protecting the endangered species from being caught here in Indonesia. So I'm hoping that the effort that we do here in the local scale could be duplicated in other areas in remote coastal communities in Indonesia.
Yeah, that's incredible, especially when you find a keystone species like that, one that at the top of the food chain affects so many other things. Learning about them, learning about where they live and how they survive is the first step, and then educating the community. And I think all you guys have an educational aspect for your partners and for your investors and all this. So, and I think Ananya, I like what I think you're going to talk about, and I want to say thanks for being here. Some of my favorite flora. You're also an SOA grantee and responsible for looking it up, a lot of carbon reduction, a lot of carbon sequestration in these mangroves and seagrass, and doing it through a carbon offset program. I'd love to hear more about it. I also want to hear more about the distinction between what's important about the marine and the estuarial.
Thank you so much for having me here, SOA, Wilson Sonsini, and Ultramarine. Feeling super humbled to be able with all these amazing speakers here today. So my organization is called Carbonetics. I'm co-founder and chief growth officer of Carbonetics. We don't have a CEO. We consider the global atmosphere as our CEO. And actually, our solution is mainly about trying to create sustainable livelihood for local coastal communities, and at the same time, understanding which areas are taken by the sea level rise, and how do we manage to help the local communities to have alternative livelihood. So what we do is that we connect communities partnership or even corporation partnership to plan with us. And it's in the package of Blue Carbon package, whereby you will get mangrove, seagrass, and you can also opt for corals actually. And we channel those money to plan with local farmers. So we have 2 sites in the north coast of Jakarta, as well as the other one is in Bintan Island. It's in an island called Dompak, which is, you know, really, really exposed to sea level rise. And you can already even see it from today that there's, you know, a big field of area that is actually eaten up by the sea level rise. So we really think that this is something that we need to do and action quickly. And what we do is that we're connecting with different corporations to understand how much offset or carbon footprint do they have, and therefore we translate that to Blue Carbon package. And then channel the money to the locals. So hopefully by doing that, we're able to give them other alternative income other than just local tourism, which is obviously closed off during COVID, and also fishing, which is getting harder and harder because of the sea level change and just the general change in the weather. So that's what we do. And you're right, we have an educational element as well in our work, which is our mission is basically to demystify the climate crisis, to inspire and enable climate action while improving the livelihood of communities. So to demystify alone is not just about educating, but it's also to knocking on government's door and trying to improve on blue carbon policies that is more sustainable for Indonesia. So that's a brief introduction to carbonetics.
Well, thanks very much, and I'll stick with you for the first kind of open question, and I hope you guys all talk with each other because I think we all can perceive connections between each of you, and how you guys kind of are addressing overlapping problems, and it strikes me as the word ecosystem, right? I mean, when the analogy of electric vehicles, it would have been really hard for GM. They did it last week to commit to making only electric vehicles until the electric vehicle charging system was kind of going to be ready by that time. And so it's a true ecosystem, right? And so and I can see how the mangroves and the coral and the fisheries are all part of the same thing. And you guys are probably all going to succeed together in achieving the mission of improving coastal communities and also combating the effects of the climate degradation that we've been suffering. So, Ananya, I'd like to hear about what things do you hope to achieve in the near and mid and long term with carbon ethics, and kind of what needs to happen for you to really feel like you'll definitely get there.
It certainly takes quite a long reflective time, right? Just to think about it. I myself is actually a corporate activist, and a lot of the other members in our organization is also corporate activists. I work for an integrated energy company that aims to transform the energy landscape as well. So I totally understand the story like GM and how hard it is on the ground to also decarbonize your portfolio, and at the same time linking that to ecosystem or social aspects. So I think 2021 is an important year for carbonetics as we are trying to not just move, but keeping the NGO form, but also we're gonna try to become a social enterprise as well, in the sense that we'll be able to hire better people in our organizations and pay them properly, attract impact investors, and actually being able to scale up in terms of our impacts, not just in 2 locations, but perhaps in more locations in Indonesia. So if you ask me, what would it take for me to achieve all these missions, is that we'll be able to do our current model, ecosystem protection model, conservation for blue oceans, in more locations in Indonesia, and actually proving it to the local government that this is a model that's workable, and therefore we can do more of that in Indonesia, and to the sense that we can actually improve the blue carbon policies here in Indonesia. So we're very much focusing on Indonesian coastal oceans because it does need a lot of help. But I think in 3 to 5 years, we want to see us in more locations and being able to prove that our model works.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny how that's challenging, because I think planting trees and planting grass demonstrably works. But I understand the challenge of getting all the support you need. And it's you know, the first person through the wall always is the one to, you know, to crash through it. But I think you're going to, you know, as you demonstrate the value to corporates, to investors, and to governments, you'll make it just that much easier for other folks to follow and to expand. So and I think that's a common thing we'll see with everyone on the panel here. Rafid, same question to you. What do you hope to, what's on your, what are you excited about achieving coming up, and what does it take to get there for you?
Yeah, thanks, David, for the questions. I think a little bit similar with Nandia. I think the atmosphere of small NGO here in Indonesia, we're quite struggling with the funding, and especially we're a nonprofit. All of my members here are working voluntarily, so we're working, purely to conserve the treasure here in Alor. At the same time, we're also juggling other different work. And in the future, I think we really would like to, fully dedicate it to our work, so we will not get distracted with other, things that we have outside of the outside of these organizations. And because, even if like we're working part-time here with Treasure Shack Indonesia, we've seen like very positive and fast change with the mindset of the local community and the local government. At first, like when we come here in Alor, no one actually recognized the Treasure Shack's presence in the area. And there are lots of pregnant females here, and people are getting, catching them every day, killing the babies and killing the sharks. So it creates a huge impact for the sustainability of the species. And we come here, we just simply, giving them the educations about the status of the sharks, and then giving them, a whole new perspective about the potentials of growing the tourism industry here in Alor, especially for specific tourism for treasure sharks. People start to recognize, people start to take pride of the treasure shark populations here in Alor, because they feel like it's something that is an asset for their, regional economy. And, and we've seen like a huge kind of change with this community, and they're working together with us to finding solutions that works both for the sharks and also for the local communities. And yeah, I think that that's sort of like a local achievement that we're hoping to see in 1 or 2 years, and then hopefully that we can kind of bring all of these successes to the provincial level and even the national level of government, so we can bring more attentions and discussions on how to protect treasure sharks at the national level, so that they can be thriving in the region, especially here, because there are lots of pregnancy, and we see potentials of this area as a nursery habitat that is extremely important to be protected firsthand.
Right, and not only because the nursery habitats are really important, per se, but they also drive a lot of the local economy, right?
That's true, yeah. And I think that it's very limited information about the treasure sharks. Like in general, sharks everywhere in Indonesia is still understudied, right? So it's hampering the conservation efforts for them, the regulations and everything. So I think when we reveal this potential nursery habitat, this could be the first ever in Indonesia for the nursery habitat of the treasures. So it could be an important discovery.
Yeah, that strikes me about all of the ocean innovations, and we have so many firsts, right? And it's like, how could this be the first time? I mean, obviously it's a lot of effort, and it's a lot of innovation, but man, we're still in the early days, and I think a dollar investment, $1 at a time goes further here, because hey, this is the first time someone's doing it. It's not as if everyone's done all the solutions. The solutions are sitting there. We just have to pursue them. Courtney, for you, I think about the fishing industry as one where you have a lot of small businesses. You have these kind of at the middle of the stack. You have the fisheries management, whoever manages that, and then you have kind of higher regulations above that. So where do you fit in? What do you need to see to achieve the things you're trying to do in the near and long term?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. The fishing is an industry that really has not seen much technology over, right? Everybody's using the same gear that they've used for generations and generations. And so I think, there can be a lot of inertia at all of the levels, I think, and resistance to change. And so one of the things that we've really focused on is several years of just working with commercial fishermen, listening to what their issues are, to watching how they operate, and really making sure that we understand what they need and what's going to work for them. That's really going to help the way that they run their businesses and not hinder it. And I think that's where we really are. This year we have several trials that we're running in very different fisheries, and learning. We put special particular sensor suites on these buoys so that they're actually getting information beyond just where their gear is, but it's actually more information about like what's going on out in the water. We're giving them this like superpower to know what's going on out, with all of their assets that they leave out on the water, whether it's for aquaculture fisheries or wild caught. And so this year we're really looking to expand our network of buoys out on the water and get that information of how much gear is being recovered using this technology. And that's kind of the focus of what we're looking at. But what the fishers are really looking at is how much faster do they find their gear, and how much time did they save out on the water. It makes, it becomes, it's a bottom line issue for them. And it's also time that they don't, they want to be more efficient. They want to spend their time out on the water fishing, and then they can get back home to their families faster. And so I think that, that's really our goal for this year, is to see that the network out on the water built up. And then moving on from there, as we're putting additional sensors out on these buoys, they become, we can use fishing gear to collect ocean data that's relevant not just to this industry, but even beyond. And so I think that's where we're really aiming towards for the coming months and years ahead.
That's great. Pilots in progress is always such an exciting time. Where do you think the lever is? Do you think it's it sounds like you're saying individual commercial fishermen kind of adopting this and then saying, wow, this is much better. And then now you have this cohort of early adopters to lead the way and evangelize for you.
That's exactly how we're going about this. There is, there's management agencies engaged as well. I think that, there's a couple of ways to go about that, but there's obviously different players and different stakeholders in all of the fisheries. It's a really fascinating industry when you get into it. And so that's where we're really focusing our efforts on the fishing fleets though at this stage.
Great. Sam, hope you're still there.
I'm here, Dave.
Tell me about some of the exciting stuff happening underway at Coral Vita and what it would take for you to tell me we're definitely going to get there on your goals.
Well, before I do that, I just got to say what an awesome panel. I mean, going back to childhood, thresher sharks always fascinated me with the crazy tales. I've seen mangroves literally save people's lives, let alone all the other benefits they provide here in the Bahamas during Hurricane Dorian, the coast protection value they provide. And knowing fishermen, eating seafood, knowing also how much bycatch and issues there are, and then Dave, for a corporate securities lawyer, to have thrown yourself into the ocean and dedicated yourself to this. It's really truly a pleasure to be here, and it's super exciting. So for Coral Vita, I mentioned before, our ultimate vision is we want large-scale land-based coral farms in every country and territory with reefs, where we not only are having the ecological impact that's needed to keep reefs alive, and to ensure that the communities who depend on them can continue benefiting from them, but we've also created sort of a whole restoration economy around it, where there's a self-sustaining industry that supports us, but really also other coral reef restoration practitioners, and hopefully other mangrove and seagrass and other forms of ecosystem restoration, because this is really, I think, the key difference between, for us, what we're doing and many other people in coral farming is we're doing this as a business, where we partner with amazing coral scientists. We are either partnerships or supportive of other NGOs working in the space, but looking at this from the business. One of the things that's really held back coral reef restoration for the 2 decades or so that's existed is sustainable funding and then doing large scale projects. Most projects are small scale. It's a one-off grant. When after college, I lived in Mauritius, I got a grant from the United Nations at my NGO, Eli Africa, to do a project where we can grow 5,000 corals once. It's not a fun process to get a UN grant. Then the grant expired. That was the end of the project. And Mauritius alone needs 5 million corals every year. And so what we're doing right now at our pilot farm in Grand Bahama is on the sort of ecological side, restoring reefs, proving out our track record. We're also demonstrating the business model, and the two pillars for us are selling reef restoration as a service to, as I said before, everyone that depends on the tourism, coastal protection, fisheries benefits of reefs. And then our farms being on land, we decided, well, let's turn them into education centers for local communities, ensure that the people who depend on these reefs the most, whether they're students or fishermen, can sort of be empowered through our work. And then also becoming tourism attractions, people paying entrance fees, adopting coral, planting them with our teams. Obviously, a few of those things have taken a hit because of COVID, and in our case also, Hurricane Dorian, we were one of the two main islands inundated by the worst storm ever to hit the Bahamas in recorded history. So we've had our fair share of experiencing climate change on the front lines, but also have our farm up and running again, and just raised a $2 million round in spite of everything to move forward. So this new fundraise basically lets us expand our team. We're getting some R&D projects going to prove the efficacy of our work, expanding the impact, and then positioning us to start launching farms in more countries around the world to sort of help us achieve that really big vision. So there's many moving parts, from the business to the reefs and coral farming to the education. And where we're at right now is a really interesting moment also because this hasn't been mentioned yet, and I think it's applicable to pretty much everyone here. 2021 actually is the start of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And that's 2021 to 2030. As we're also seeing a lot of really interesting conservation financing mechanisms coming online. The Seychelles had foreign debt forgiven by European nations in exchange for that money being spent on conservation and sustainable development. What other countries can benefit from that? The first ever reef insurance policy had its payout in Central America after the hurricanes, because the insurance industry sees coral reefs along with mangroves and other oyster reefs, and they act like seawalls. So if the hotels pay to restore them, payouts will be better during storm events, premiums might be going lower. You look at all these things that are coming online with blue bonds and the like, it's a really, really exciting time. But then to sort of, and this is again, I think applicable to everyone, there's so many good projects out there with a lot of people who want to fund stuff, but they want to write really, really, really big checks. And there's this sort of chicken and egg balance for the people who've got really, really good ideas that are proving things out, but aren't always getting the funding they need. And obviously we're lucky enough to have gotten over those hurdles with our funding round. But I would say my call to action beyond just Coral Vita would be sort of putting more impact angels in the space, people who can galvanize all around the world, from Indonesia to the British Virgin Islands to Kenya, the people who've got these great solutions that can do so much, that can achieve the impact we all want to see, but have that initial funding gap that needs to happen. So we've navigated through that. We're now working towards scaling up our impact and moving forward with all the people around the world who are trying to protect coral reefs.
Yeah, I would say scale. If the ocean's one thing, it's scale, right? It's enormous. Any solution, well, we need all the solutions, and we need them all big. And so your notion, I think everyone has kind of touched on it and embodied it in what they're doing, is that, hey, this has to be valuable in terms of money to someone for us to continue doing this. This can't be a charity case for us to really achieve the goal at scale. And so Coral Vita is, I didn't know about the coral factoring into the insurance claim before. I think that's really, really smart, right? Insurance companies are the people who know best about the risks facing the coast and are most situated to try to prevent that type of damage. And mangroves, seagrass, coral, all spin off these other benefits. And I kind of think of the 20th century as profiting off of externalities, right? I sell you oil. I don't care what happens to the world. We've made this transaction. All the externalities are someone else pays for those. And in the 21st century, maybe like you said, from this decade, we're going to start internalizing externalities. We're going to start profiting off of the externalities. Hey, I'm planting coral, but this is spinning off, and I'm planting mangroves and seagrass, and I'm implementing better fishing practices. This is spinning off benefits to the community in kind of a diverse set of ways. And so I guess the question is, how do we capture that externality back into the transaction where it's valued to the people who are doing the work? Sam, one of the ideas was an insurance company. Of course, they're perfectly situated to care about this issue. There's obviously tourism. I think Ananya, your idea has I mean, I have paid to plant mangroves before, and it was great fun, and that was my little contribution. And I guess for fisheries, it's kind of, not only are you having this benefit to the fishermen on day one, but you have this benefit to the fishery over the 3, 5, 10-year time span. So you, tell me about and each of you guys can jump in here and talk to each other as well. The initial value that you get, and I love that the value of a technology or an innovation a lot of times doesn't align with the value to the world, but in all of your cases, it absolutely does. Value means value. We're not playing tricks with words here. But tell me how that translates into you guys having success and getting investors and promulgating your solutions.
Well, yeah, I think as the case with all of us, it's kind of like a win-win-win by implementing our solutions, by hiring us. It's like you said, really everyone stands to benefit from healthy coral reefs or healthy mangroves, and so on. And so I think it's also worth mentioning real quick, and as someone who's in the business of selling reef restoration as a service, the best thing to do isn't actually to hire Coral Vita. It's to stop killing reefs. So there's no excuse to not solve climate change or pollution or overfishing and all these things, habitat destruction. But we're obviously living in a world where that's not happening at the scale or effectiveness required. And so we need adaptation solutions. And so I think when we're considering the value of reefs, I mean, for us, or I should say the value of reef restoration, you kind of have the idea that, okay, there's a coral farm on land. That's a value add, whether for local real estate, for the taxi union, and restaurants. It's kind of like there's a new attraction on the island, and it's an education center. So that's bringing, just by existing, a new value to the local economy and local communities. Then obviously when you think about the reefs themselves, fishermen and their families, the hotels, coastal property owners, the insurance companies, marine protected areas, even if you're worried about fisheries out to sea, if that's sort of your foundation's investment philosophy, there are draws all the way back to the coral reefs and mangroves and seagrass beds, because they act as the nurseries for a lot of those species that end up becoming pelagic or sort of work their way up the food chain. So I think one of the challenges we're faced with is that we have to be in the business also of evangelism and working with economists and researchers as we just try and restore reefs or these other ecosystems or get rid of ghost nets, because people don't always see the inherent value. But that's why it's also really exciting to see Swiss Re and Willis Towers Watson, very serious, not, I would say, always what you think of as progressive companies, like, this is a no-brainer. We have to figure out what these externalities are and start paying for them, because we're also paying the price of inaction. If a hotel no longer has a healthy coral reef that they can market to their guests who want to snorkel and scuba dive, that costs a lot more than them paying to restore a reef. You sort of extrapolate that outwards. And then even if you're someone who's as far away as Kansas, if you want to still adopt a coral or support any of these initiatives, you have an opportunity to physically contribute to that and also help tell the story, which goes back to my original point about protecting these ecosystems in the first place. So that's my 2 cents. I could keep talking, but I don't want to hog it away from everyone else.
Thanks, Sam. That's I mean, I think I see everyone nodding along, and everyone, I think you're speaking for everyone one way or another. And so we really appreciate that. It's so great and inspiring that you guys have these solutions. I know we don't have all the time in the world left, but I want to ask a question of each of you. I'll start with Rafid. What can the people who can hear us now do to support you and what you're doing?
Yeah, thanks, David. I think I'm gonna, echo a little bit what Sam has said about the sustainable funding. I think that since that we're working, into transitioning the fishermen into something else, the fishing practices itself, it's something that has been going on in the community for, hundreds of years, right? They've been accustomed to it, and it's part of their culture and identity as well. And when we wanted to transitioning them into something else, it requires a behavior change that we cannot achieve in like 1 or 2 years timeline. That generally that the funding agency giving us time, and we need more kind of a long-term funding in order to achieve the behavioral change of the local community, so that we can really achieve the results that we can see, the thriving shark populations, the thriving community, and a thriving ecosystem in general. So yeah, that's something that is very important. And I think that if people out there hearing about my project about Treasure Shark Indonesia, we really appreciate if you could help us in the organizations, providing the support in the financial aspects of the community here, because we are trying to provide the small coastal community with better livelihoods, including providing them with skills in catching a sustainable tuna fisheries, and then providing them market access in the sustainable tuna industries, like the certifications with the the fair trade and the MSC. So we're working on the infrastructure, and reaching more shark fishing communities to join us, and we therefore we can embrace all elements of the community, not only the fishermen, the shark fishermen kids, and also the women who are helping selling the fish to the market, and that's therefore like all of the community can benefit to that impact. So yeah, we really hope to get that kind of support from everyone out there who are interested in supporting our project.
Thanks, Rafid. And Nadia, what can we do to help?
Hi, yeah, so I think thank you, Sam, for speaking on behalf of all of us here, perhaps like what's in our brains and what's in our hearts already. I mean, for sure, sustainable financing is one bottleneck, right? But then I think the other one as well, when I first started get to NGO, there is actually competition between NGOs, right? And what I'm actually promoting is collaboration, vertical, horizontal, across peer-to-peer. I think we're really facing a ticking bomb case, like we've only got 7 years before 1.5 degree happens. So collaboration, vertical and horizontally, and I think SOA is already helping a lot with that. And if we could do more of that, that's even better. I feel like all these guys here have superpower, and why don't we really focus on implementation and execution? So that's number one. And I think number two, even with sustainable financing, capacity building for the farmers at the local level is still really hard to achieve. There's a varying degree of educational levels. There's also varying degree of commitments or even understanding of why the mission is important. So capacity building takes a lot of time, takes a lot of funding and patience as well. So we're trying to step that up for lots of the locals in the areas that we're operating on. So if you guys have any tips on that, or how do you guys do it at your own local level, I think even peer-to-peer learning and understanding is also helpful. Thirdly, I think like small initiatives here and there are great, but what's even better is a transformation in the policies of blue carbon economy, right? So how do we actually have policies that support businesses like us or efforts like ours, and how do we match that up with local government incentives, for instance, or how do we make that part of political incentives that saving plastics from the oceans are great, planting more mangroves are great, that's actually better than building up more villas on the coastal areas. So that kind of discussion that I need more, and I think SOA can look at it from a more holistic or helicopter point of view and give us more insight on how can we do that better, especially you're in corporate security lawyer professional, right? So I think we can really work from those angles. And I think number 4 is that we have Patreon in our carbonetics.org. Please do go there and help us to protect the coastal economy and also protect the coastal areas, and just subscribe, help us. And yeah, that's it. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Anandya. Oh, and I'm sure one other thing that everyone can do is reach out to us. I think anyone listening has our contact information already, so that's a way to help directly if you want to talk more. Courtney, same question to you. What can the folks do to support you?
Sure. I think that You know, we see a lot of times, I think there's this notion that conservation and industry, particularly in the oceans, are at odds. And it doesn't, I think we're seeing more and more that that's not necessarily the case. And in fact, we can't afford to ignore some of these issues that are facing our oceans. It's you know, I think the blue economy is going to be built around the fact that if we, you know, if we do address these, you know, these issues that are facing this you know, very fragile environment, that you know, we can actually create an economy around that that actually is beneficial for all the industries that operate in the oceans, because a healthy, you know, healthy oceans can actually support some of these industries in a much better way. I think that you know, one of the things that SOA is really good at, and you know, it would be wonderful to see on an even broader scale, is seeing how all of these, you know, solutions are being worked on. It's I mean, this group here is just, it's just amazing, you know, all of the different issues that are being addressed. And I think there's something about understanding how a lot of these issues are linked, and how some of these the solutions can work together. I think there is no one silver bullet that's going to fix all the issues in the oceans, right? We have to come at these, you know, in a unified approach, and really kind of figure out how we're going to tackle a lot of these different issues. And I think there are some partnerships that need to happen both at the startup level all the way up through the governmental level. And that's how I think we're going to really be able to see progress being made on some of these issues.
I've got my fingers crossed for some U.S. policy in the near future, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I've been trained not to expect anything big. Sam, last word to you.
Thanks, Dave. Well, the first thing I'd say is I've touched on before, we need more impact angels. And this isn't for us at Coral Vita. This is for everyone here and all the other ocean entrepreneurs and environmental entrepreneurs out the world. We started off with a $1,000 grant. We're now raising a $2 million round, but we wouldn't have gotten anywhere if it wasn't for that $1,000 grant and then that $15,000 check and the smaller checks. And we're lucky to have people like the Sustainable Ocean Alliance supporting us. So whether it's directly supporting entrepreneurs or supporting groups like SOA, so many of the solutions I think everyone wants to see out there can be realized, but need those early stage checks for social entrepreneurs. You can adopt a coral. Go on our website, coralvita.co. Adopt a reef if you really want to. And if you know whether it's regulators or hotels or landowners or anyone that you think beyond or even within the Bahamas, but when we're thinking about where the next farms will be, we're thinking a few years ahead, from Necker Island to the South Pacific. We want coral farms everywhere, and we need to start planning where those are going to go. So definitely please reach out and let me know if you think there are places that need restoration. And I'd also want to give a plug in the context of how many sort of interconnected solutions there are. One of the reasons why we chose Grand Bahama was because it was a great regulatory framework, among other things, for proving out the business and a need for restoring reefs. We want to then scale these solutions globally. And so there's actually a really interesting thing that we're involved with called the Blue Action Lab here. So just check it out, blueactionlab.com. It's trying to basically be a proving ground for everything from climate disaster preparedness to ecosystem restoration to fisheries management, so that people can come to Grand Bahama, prove those things out, and then scale them all around the world. And so thinking about how you can support that, including Coral Vita and then all the other entrepreneurs on this panel, it really is a team effort when it comes to the ocean. And I appreciate everyone taking the time to listen in. And like I said at the beginning, I hope you can come plant some corals with us in Grand Bahama sometime soon.
Absolutely. I think we're at time here. I want to say thank you so much to everyone for being here, least of all, but for doing what you're doing every day, most of all. You and other people who are doing what you're doing, I think we're all on this mission together. And I think you hearing each other and us all talking to each other is like kind of a feedback loop of inspiration and motivation to keep doing it. Thank you all so much. And thanks for everyone listening.